Sawadee-krab. A very good morning to you all and warm welcome to the BOT Digital Finance Conference. Welcoming all of you here on site at the Bank of Thailand Learning Center and those of you joining us online as well. We are very excited to be back once again and see lively faces. I am Buk Bunrit Phonglasamirod.
And I'm Pami Sinida Pedvilakun, truly honored and delighted to be here today. And this year actually marks two very special occasions. The first is the 5th Annual Digital Finance Conference hosted by the Bank of Thailand. And yes, we are back online and on-site in a hybrid event. And also the 80th anniversary of the Bank of Thailand. And also a significant part of the celebration. The BOT Digital Finance Conference will highlight how Thailand has continued and will collaborate, innovate, and inspire to uplift the well-being for all.
In compliance with the Personal Data Protection Act or PDPA, please be informed that there will be photographing and video recordings throughout the event. Your image, audio, or other information may be broadcasted through BOT website or other social media channels. Should you have any questions, please kindly inform the Bank of Thailand staff. The event is packed with exciting sessions, so there will be no dedicated breaks between sessions, but refreshments and snacks are available for you throughout the day. Now you might wonder why the tagline of this year is collaborate, innovate, and inspire. Well, we have a little bit of surprise for you. Let's explore together.
Big round of applause to welcome all of you to the event once again.
That was a great summary of how collaborate, innovate, and inspire came to be. Well, we are very excited to be back in person. This marks a great cause for celebration because this is for the first time since the pandemic outbreak that we are hosting this event in a true new normal manner, a hybrid format.
Yes, and we're very excited to be back here again. And the video truly is a reflection of the collaboration, the innovation, and the inspiration. We're truly grateful for all the stakeholders who take part in such an auspicious occasion. And now I would like to invite Dr. Sethaput Suthiwan-Naraput, the Governor of the Bank of Thailand, to deliver the opening speech. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Governor onto the stage.
สวัสดีแขกผู้มีเกียรติทุกท่านนะครับเนื่องจากเรามีแขกจากต่างประเทศเยอะผมจะขออนุญาตบรรยายเป็นภาษาอังกฤษนะครับวันนี้ Distinguished guests, it's my pleasure to welcome you to the 2022 BOT Digital Finance Conference this year. We have over 70 experts and policymakers from 14 countries attending this event and sharing their thoughts. We have over 60 industry players showcasing the innovations, and we have over 3,000 registered participants. So I think we can all look forward to a very constructive and productive 3 days here. If I may, I'd like to begin by perhaps sharing some thoughts from the BOT on why we see digital finance as being important, how we see it contributing to the economy, the economic challenges facing Thailand, and importantly, sharing some thoughts about the kinds of things that we at the Bank of Thailand would like to see happen in this space. Thailand is facing many challenges. Let me mention at least 4. First, there's a lack of growth and prosperity. We have low productivity. We've tended to suffer from a lack of competitiveness. Secondly, there's a lack of resiliency. A lot of our economic structure is not terribly resilient to the kind of changes that are coming. Third, there's a lack of sustainability. A lot of our current growth and past growth has come from basically taking from the future. If you look at our growth, for example, a lot of it's been fueled by debt, so a lot of borrowing to finance consumption. So a lot of that growth is not particularly sustainable. And fourth, I think, and very importantly, we lack inclusivity. There's a high concentration of economic activities in Thailand among a few sectors, among a few firms. There tends to be inadequate opportunity for new players to come in and manage to grow. And markets in general haven't been as contestable and as competitive as I think we would like to see. So these challenges are probably not new. Most of you are familiar with them. But if we look back and think about what we've done about these challenges, I think policy and policymakers have focused first and foremost on that first challenge, that challenge of low productivity, inadequate competitiveness, low growth, which is understandable because our growth performance has been relatively lackluster. We're growing at below, what we probably should be. And we face a lot of challenges, a lot of headwinds, right? We know, for example, our demographics are suffering, the labor force is shrinking. So if the labor force is shrinking and there are fewer bodies that are working out there, the way you get to grow more is you need to increase your productivity. So the focus on productivity, I think, is sensible, makes sense, and is reasonable. But it's not enough. I think increasingly it's quite clear that if we are to address the challenges going forward, we need to address it in a much more holistic manner. And we need to address not just the issue of, again, low productivity and low growth, but also the other issues, the resiliency, the sustainability, the inclusivity, if we are going to move forward in a more, again, sustained and resilient manner. And the same story applies for innovations. We need innovation, obviously, to address and overcome those challenges that I mentioned. But again, the kind of innovation that we need, right, shouldn't just be focused, again, on only issues of enhancing productivity and efficiency, but it needs to address those other challenges that I mentioned as well. So yes, we certainly, absolutely need innovation, but not just any kind of innovation. We need innovation that is responsible. And what do I mean when I say that we need responsible innovation? Sounds like a good term, but let's try to unpack that, put some flesh on its bones, and think about what it means then to really have innovation that is responsible. I think at a minimum, responsible innovation needs to address, again, not just issues of efficiency, which we certainly need, again, but it also needs to address those other challenges that I mentioned as well. So we need innovations that will enhance our productivity. We need innovations that will enhance our resiliency, meaning it does not contribute to increased instability. It doesn't create hype. It doesn't lead to fraud. It does not lead to Ponzi schemes. And it should not make the economy less resilient by making, again, our growth reliant on borrowing from the future, excessive debt creation, or over-concentration of growth on very few products and very few sectors or service providers. And that innovation should also contribute to making things more sustainable. Okay. And also, very importantly, again, as I mentioned, should try to enhance inclusivity, try to generate broader prosperity and not lead to unfair competition, and should try to increase opportunities and not lead to excessive concentration of market power. So a more level playing field, a more contestable market and economy. Now those four concepts probably sound okay, but probably sound a bit abstract. So let's try to illustrate what we mean with the benefit of a few concrete examples of what we at the Bank of Thailand think of as responsible innovation. First example is PromptPay. PromptPay, as you know, is our fast payment system. It's been, I think, by any measure, quite successful. We now have over 71 million registered accounts and numbers based on mobile numbers and citizen ID numbers. The number of transactions has increased steadily. We're now at about over 40 million transactions per day. That's up over 30-odd% year on year. And if we think about this kind of innovation, I think it tends to tick all the right boxes in terms of what we mean by responsible innovation. It's certainly increased productivity and efficiency. Costs are very low. Transactions happen, very quickly, very conveniently. And very importantly, I think, and very encouragingly, it's clearly contributed to much greater inclusivity. I think one thing that was, a very welcome sight during the COVID crisis was seeing market vendors, street vendors, right, use the QR codes, right, to get people, right, to use purchase their products and services and get access to some of the government schemes that were put in place. Again, a welcome change compared to what we had before. Another example of a responsible innovation is our mBridge project. Some of you may be familiar with this. This is our wholesale CBDC project, which we're working on with other central banks, PBOC, China, UAE, United Arab Emirates, and the Hong Kong Monetary Authority, and the Bank of Thailand, along with the BIS Innovation Hub, to try to address some of the long-standing problems in cross-border payments, a lot of inefficiencies that we see with the correspondent banking network. And I think if you look at mBridge, again, it is an innovation, which again we can think of as quite responsible because it addresses, again, a lot of those pain points and a lot of those characteristics that we would like to see with innovation. Just very recently, we did a pilot involving 20 commercial banks, including 5 banks from Thailand, to support transactions, international trade. And the results, I think, were quite encouraging. There was a substantial decrease in cross-border transfer times from the usual 3 to 5 days, now down to several seconds. We managed to enable direct peer-to-peer linkages between participating banks, which again can lower the cost of these cross-border transactions. And we also managed to reduce settlement risk and support the use of local currencies in international payments. So if you look at what that project, it's a pilot right now, but what it managed to achieve, it ticks a lot of the boxes that we talked about in terms of, again, enhancing efficiency, productivity, improving resiliency, increasing inclusivity. Think about the number of people that need to, workers overseas that want to send their funds home and stuff that currently face very, very high fees. Putting in place this kind of innovation clearly would benefit them, not just from lowering costs, making it much more accessible, but again, reducing the risk associated with the usual pain points in the correspondent banking network. So that's an example of innovation, prompt pay, which is already done, experienced a lot of success. Second example, mBridge, an example of responsible innovation, which is underway, a pilot, but we're going to work on it, build on it. But we think now about innovations which haven't happened yet, but we would like to see, which would again, I think, help a lot in terms of ticking all the right boxes in terms of what we think of as responsible innovation. One example that I would cite, which I think holds tremendous promise in addressing many of the challenges that we face, not just in Thailand, but I think in many economies around the region, is tokenization of real-world assets. Right? Things like real estate, invoices. If we were able to, again, tokenize those kinds of assets, I think the opportunities that would improve in terms of allowing greater access, greater inclusion, and greater affordability to the real economy, that would be a real game changer. And along with those examples of responsible innovation, I don't think it's terribly hard for us to think of examples of not so responsible innovation. Things that we see, again, a lot of times in the digital asset space, where there is, I think, by nature, a lot of hype, a lot of speculation. So some GameFi projects, which basically have been scams, or even the ones that have received a lot of media attention, like algorithmic stable coins, which ended up proving themselves less than stable, like the Terra case, which again, in terms of innovation, did not address, again, the issues of resiliency, sustainability, inclusivity, and the other aspects of innovation that we would like to see in order to feel that innovation is a responsible innovation. So what then does the Bank of Thailand as a financial regulator, what is it that we want to see happen in this space? In a few words, to summarize, I would say would be, not surprisingly, given the themes of what I've been trying to talk about, we would like to see responsible innovation in the financial space, or responsible financial innovation. The financial sector obviously has a critical role to play in trying to support innovation in the economy. It helps to allocate funds to potentially productive businesses to finance their innovation, either adopting new processes or coming up with new products. And then financial innovation itself, meaning innovation within the financial sector, right, can also enhance the role of the financial system beyond traditional finance and help, again, improve access and inclusion, especially for those groups that have been underserved, which, again, in Thailand, as in many economies around the world, are the SME and household sectors. And the Bank of Thailand, again, as a regulator, I think can play an important role in trying to create and support and facilitate these responsible innovations to occur. We can try to support innovations that have the potential to raise, again, productivity, enhance resiliency, inclusion in the Thai economy. And we also have a role as a regulator to try to prevent innovations that may cause instability or unfairness from happening. So let me illustrate with two examples that I think show what we at the Bank of Thailand have been trying to do to try to support responsible innovations and make innovations that do occur, again, more responsible and tick those boxes that we talked about earlier. First is supporting financial infrastructure development. So this includes a whole host of things. It includes prompt pay, which is talked about, and our next step in terms of prompt pay is to try to extend that to cross-border and payment remittances. Thailand right now is the country that has the largest number of cross-border linkages in terms of QR codes and whatnot within ASEAN. And we expect to extend also the fast payment linkage from the one that we've established with Singapore, which is again the first international cross-border fast payment linkage in the world to other countries within the region. We expect to extend the use case of our digital ID from individuals, to businesses, with a goal to try to pilot the service next year. We are exploring, as I mentioned, several central bank digital currency projects, both the wholesale CBDC project, the M-Bridge project I mentioned, and also, as many of you are probably familiar with, the retail CBDC project, which is we are piloting later this year. And we're promoting open infrastructure and open data to try to leverage the shared infrastructure and information exchange to increase efficiency and promote competition. So why all this emphasis on, again, digital financial infrastructure? I think, again, it's because infrastructure tends to tick those boxes that we talked about in terms of responsible innovation. Infrastructure, in the jargon of economists, is a public good. And what does that mean? Public goods are what we, again, apologies for the jargon, what we call non-rival, meaning one person can use them, but the fact that one person uses them doesn't mean that other people cannot use them. So the benefits can be shared. And so typically, it's the reason why economists tend to like things which are of public good nature. But not all infrastructure and not all public goods are the same. If we think, for example, and let's use an analogy that is not in the digital space, but in the physical space, we think, for example, about toll roads, right? Expressway, toll roads, right? It's an example of infrastructure, an example of a public good. Many people can use it. But if we contrast that with other kinds of infrastructure, things like mass transit, right? The inclusion, the efficiency benefits are quite different. Toll roads are used by people that can afford to pay tolls. They're used by people that have cars. And, typically the on and off ramps, are not that extensive. Mass transit, by contrast, right, is something that is accessible to a much broader spectrum of people, and the usage, right, much broader, and the benefits, therefore, much more widespread as a result. So in terms of, again, getting the kind of innovations that we want, to tick the right boxes, to get that kind of inclusion, right? Yes, we want to build infrastructure. Yes, we want to contribute to having better digital financial infrastructure. But not all digital financial infrastructure is the same. What we want, again, is a digital financial infrastructure that is more open and more inclusive, creating opportunities, right, for those people that typically have not had a chance to compete and grow properly under the existing set of circumstances of the existing economy. The Thai economy, as we know at present, as I mentioned right from the get-go in terms of the challenges facing us, is not as level a playing field as we would like. Markets are not as competitive or as contestable as we would like. Traditional finance, again, has not been as inclusive as we would like. So we would not want digital finance to replicate, right, the problems, the obstacles, the weaknesses that we see in the economy or in the traditional finance sector, but just replicate it in the digital finance sector. So we hope again that the kinds of things that we see in the digital finance space, including the kinds of infrastructure that we would like to put in place, are of a different character, more inclusive, more open, right, more contestable, and a more level playing field. Second example, I think where the Bank of Thailand can contribute to this more responsible innovation, is providing the right kind of regulatory framework to facilitate innovation by the private sector. Now, this is obviously easier said than done, and it is always a challenge for regulators to try to balance trying to foster innovation with risk management, trying to ensure that the innovations that occur, right, don't have all these potentially negative benefits that could harm and impose risks to the system. So trying to strike that right balance between innovation and risk management, I think, is a challenge faced by regulators across the world. And what kinds of things are we doing in this space to help? One is the term that you're probably very familiar with, the RIA, and the Regulatory Impact Assessment, Regulatory Guillotine, which I think comes in waves, but I think is something that we need to pick up and really kind of redo and re-energize our efforts in this area. And I think I've communicated quite clearly to our team that we need to see more in this area, and again, to ensure that the regulations do not obstruct innovation, but at the same time provide sufficient guardrails to ensure that the innovations don't pose undue risks to the system. Other things that we're doing in this space are things like sandboxes, regulatory sandboxes, and regulatory guardrails. Most of you, again, are familiar with sandboxes. Regulatory sandboxes is a potential enabler of innovation, which allows development and testing of new technology, right? But in a sandbox to ensure that proper risk management is in place before you do the full launch. And again, just like with the RIA, I would argue and confess that yes, we need to do more in this area to make our sandboxes more effective and more efficient. I speak quite often with our team on this, that what I like, and I say this only partly in jest, that what I would like to see is a quick sandbox, right? Meaning a sandbox that people come in and are able to exit quickly, as opposed to a box which is filled with quicksand, where people come and they get in and then they get stuck. So we are trying to make progress in this area. We're revamping some of our sandbox procedures, and I hope, again, that you in the industry will see a difference. And if not, then again, please do let us know. The other area is guardrails. I think, like a lot of other regulators, we think that regulatory guardrails make good sense, particularly in a setting where a lot of the innovations, it's hard to gauge what the risks are. So the approach is to take what we call a measured approach, right? So things that we feel, if you feel they're risky, then we put in kind of narrow guardrails. Things which are probably less risky, guardrails are a bit broader, and if things that we feel at the end of the day don't pose significant substantial risk, then take the guardrails out completely. And as an example of that, of what we've done in this area is in the area of our FinTech regulation. We used to have in Thailand, the Bank of Thailand, a ceiling, 3% of the bank's capital on investing in FinTech. But again, I think after reviewing and seeing that investments in FinTech didn't pose as substantial or significant a risk as we might have initially thought, we've removed this limit. So FinTech investments by banking groups don't have a limit now in terms of how much capital banks can commit to this. By contrast, digital assets, we feel, are an area where, again, there are substantial and significant risks. So the approach that we've taken is to not allow banks themselves to invest in the digital asset business, but allow subsidiaries or companies in the banking group to do so, but again, within a certain limit. And the limit that we have is 3% of the bank's group's capital. We feel, again, that this is an adequate amount for banks to be able to invest and innovate and learn, but not too much, okay, that it would propose risks to the banks and to the system more broadly. And that's, again, just an example of, again, that more, I think, measured, tailored, balanced approach towards regulation that we are taking to try to balance the consideration between fostering innovation and at the same time ensuring appropriate and adequate risk management. So the last point I'd like to make, and I apologize for overstaying my welcome, running overtime, is that critical to try to get success in this area, to making sure that the innovations that do occur, and that the innovations that come about are responsible, is collaboration. We cannot do it on our own. So creating responsible innovation requires collaboration from all related parties, from service providers, from consumers, from industry players, and from regulators. It requires, I think, making sure that the different players play the right roles. And I think it requires that there's the right balance, again, between the public sector and the private players. And I think there are clear examples that when that balance is off, problems arise. If there's too much public sector, too much of a public role, too much regulation, then we know that tends to obviously stifle innovation, right? And the private sector doesn't manage to innovate and grow. But the opposite is also true, right? When there's not enough when there's not enough of a public sector role, then problems also again arise. Again, let me come back to my favorite example of cross-border payments. National RTGS systems weren't designed to take linkages across countries in mind. So the private sector comes in to fill that void. Private sector markets, just like nature, abhors a vacuum. If there's a need for it, it will come and try to address that need. But sometimes when it does so, it doesn't obviously always lead to the most efficient solution. And again, the example again in the cross-border payment space is the correspondent banking network. Yes, it addresses the problem of linkages, but it does so in a fairly inefficient manner. And a more efficient solution would probably involve, again, a greater role for the public sector. Again, not in terms of getting in and getting involved and doing things that the private sector would otherwise much better equipped to do, not get involved in all that customer-facing stuff, but getting involved in doing things like setting standards, ensuring interoperability, and maybe in some cases, providing that essential infrastructure upon which the private sector can build and innovate. But getting this, again, to work properly, getting this balance right between the public sector and the private sector, and getting the different players to play the roles needed to facilitate and see more responsible innovation. Essential to that is a process of regular dialogue and engagement. And I think that conference here today is an excellent example of that, which will help foster that engagement, that collaboration, to try to move us towards the kinds of responsible innovation that the country needs. Thank you very much.
Much Dr. Sethaputh Suthiwan-Nraput, Governor of the Bank of Thailand, for his welcoming speech and also for such inspiring notes to welcome all of you here. Before the session is about to begin, let me walk you through the event of today. So here at the main conference hall will be filled with keynotes and panels on policies, strategies, and future visions of digital finance, and also broadcast live on the Bank of Thailand Facebook page. And for those joining on site, we also have the library stage on the second floor features in-depth technology and talk today, and also hackathon showcases tomorrow and career talks on Saturday. But please don't worry if you're not able to join us in person. We have session records will be available at the Bank of Thailand Facebook page and soon after the event.
And as always, our event also features showcases of financial innovations at the exhibition area on the second floor, some of which products are going to be first reviewed in Thailand here at the BOT Digital Finance Conference. Last but not least, the stair stage on the first floor will be filled with interesting financial products and services from fintech firms, bank, non-banks, government agency, and consulting firms.